But would you be worried if Ross got out?
Oh, heavens no.
Or would you be willing to have him over to dinner and hang out? Okay, thank you.
Would you be? Wait a minute. Would you be worried when forced?
I am worried as hell.
Bitcoin is immune from attack.
All right. Welcome, everybody, to the Crypto Show's Digital Cash Evolution. This is actually just a Facebook. We're recording and stuff. And this is something I wanted to do for a long time. I've talked to Lyn and Curtis both separately. And finally, we have them together. And there's this narrative that you'll see in the media all the time that Curtis was a murder-for-hire victim, but yet here he is sitting next to Lyn Ulbricht, whose son allegedly tried to have Curtis killed. Why would he do that? I don't know.
I would. That's a good question. I've always thought that it would behoove other people, the people that are in jail right now, not Ross,
the agents,
that they had more reason to do that. In fact, for the longest time, that's who I thought. And of course, I have to put a disclaimer, and everything I talk about is in my book, because I do have retained my literary rights, and so that's the main reason why I can speak about other than that. But you know the drill.
Okay. So just a quick introduction. Lyn Ulbricht is the mother of Ross Ulbricht, who is, I guess, allegedly the kingpin of the Silkroad. That's the title they've given him. And Curtis was actually a moderator, and he got corralled by the police, and he had to cooperate, or his life was over.
Yep.
And in that, some strange events came about, and we'll discuss that a little bit more. But I just want to, Lyn, what do you think about this? I mean,
well, I think it's very alarming that in the United States of America, someone can be put in a cage for the rest of their life based on charges that were never brought to trial, never ruled on by a jury, never proven, that the person who they denies, and then to top it off, the alleged victim of this plot has come out and said he doesn't think it was Ross anyway. And of course, the charges were never brought to trial in New York, and now they have been dropped from the indictment. The whole indictment has been dropped in Maryland, which, by the way, is where the corrupt agents were operating. So it was based on their evidence. So, and I've heard from criminal defense attorneys, more than one, that say this is common for prosecutors to smear people with uncharged allegations and then put them in prison.
Well, it was much easier for them to sell the idea of 2 life sentences plus 40 years and $1 million fine if Ross was out there trying to kill someone.
Right, and the judge used it. She literally used it in her sentencing to justify her barbaric sentence for something that all nonviolent charges of something Ross did on a computer when he was 26.
And so the courts are basically scaring the hell out of the jury and thinking that they need to lock this person away for life, Ross.
Well, they don't decide that. It's the judge who decides it.
Right.
They just decided, and they never ruled on whether Ross, they never ruled on there was no charge of murder for hire. But they did discuss it at trial, and even so they prejudiced the jury.
And so, Curtis, when you were kind of confronted by these police, when they kicked your door in, I mean, what was it like for you when they're kind of, they're trying to scare you to death?
I was scared.
What was the narrative that they came to you with? You got to do this. You got to do what?
Oh yeah, they sat me down. I was freaking out. I was like, I was shaking. I was, what do you, and they sat me down and I was trying to say, no, I didn't order it, which I didn't order it. And they said, oh, yes, you did. Yes, you did. And I later found out that, because I actually wrote on the package that I got that allowed them to get a subpoena or whatever to get into my home. I actually wrote on the package, return to sender. And I placed it on, the mailbox wouldn't fit. And they denied all this until after the course night.
So this is something that was purchased or sold on the Silkroad?
Yeah, I said, I didn't do this. And I saw a knob on the return address. I go, that looks familiar. I wasn't going to have anything to do with it. So I put it back on the the mailbox. I thought, well, it's not going to stay there. So I thought, you know what, I'm going to put it in the garbage can. So I brought it back, threw it in the garbage can, and then all the SWAT team dissipated. They said, oh, he's not going for it. And then the mistake I made is I went back inside and I decided, what was in that? It was really driving me crazy. So I went back out, grabbed it, which is a huge mistake. So they grabbed everybody back in. They called everybody, he's going to do it now. And I opened it up, and then that was game over.
And that's when they came in.
Yeah, my computer's open, and
right. And so who took possession of the keys and became the new administrator in your place?
It was Carl
Force.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
DEA agent, who was one of the agents at the core of the investigation.
Yeah,
just to be clear, this is a federal agent.
And he also said there was a lot of bad blood in between the agencies, between New York and Baltimore. They were like in this big competition. So, and they were trying to keep me. He says, if anybody calls you, don't talk to them. And so I didn't know who to believe. And then, then Sean Bridges calls me, and they're getting
Secret Service NSA agent.
Yeah. So
also corrupt and in prison now.
So these agents now they have your keys. So now they're acting as you. How long after they take possession of the keys before this whole idea of murder for hire comes into play?
Yeah. That was Thursday. It was on a Thursday. On that Saturday, Sunday, I can't remember, was it Force or I think it was Force, called me and he said, hey, you can't get back in. Your keys have been. So I know they were messing around in there, because all of a sudden he couldn't get back in. And I wasn't doing anything. And so I made it this big story of, I need to get the keys. I was gone on vacation. I don't know what I said. And that's why I got back in. And so, and Force made me give him the credentials. I didn't want to, but he made me, and I'll never forget. It was, he actually changed it to, oh my gosh, he did. He actually changed the password so I couldn't have control. Right. And because the password that he made was Lucky 7. And so he gave control back to me on that Sunday, I changed the password to Unlucky 7. And then it was driving him crazy that I couldn't get in. So he says, give me the password. So I gave him a password. He chuckled. He thought it was funny that I made it Unlucky 7. And then he had it for the entire week. So Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday is when we had the big round table. This is all public knowledge.
So during that time is when the murder for hire first came up.
That night.
When Carl Force got control of the site.
And Carl Force, San Francisco doesn't say this, but I am confident that Carl Force and Sean Bridges were in cahoots of some sort. They say they weren't, but I think they were, because they had weird eye contact. I was watching them. They were like had IQs. It was the strangest thing. And all of a sudden, Bridges had to find out exactly now tell me what that was again. Now, how do you get into the, he was wanting too much information in it.
So something that struck me that both of you mentioned is verbiage that was, shared on this. And, Lyn talks about it in the court records. And so you had interaction with DPR, whichever DPR was.
Yeah,
I mean, how many DPRs do you think there were?
From 2011 till 2013, I had hundreds of communications. And sometimes you could tell it was the same person. And there was other times that it was totally off, totally off. The way the person spoke, they spoke like they were from England.
Right.
That color, COLUR, just how those little tiny things. So, I can't put I'm sure there was at least a few,
right.
But it's all conjecture. It's just all thinking, it's all, we don't know for sure. All we can do is,
I mean, you were DPR a time or two.
Oh, sure. You just responding.
I mean, is this a suicide case or what?
No.
And DPR logged into the Silkroad forum when Ross was already in prison. So somebody was acting as DPR then.
Oh yeah.
That's
So what I
proven.
think the point I'm trying to get at here is what you normally seen, the verbiage coming from DPR and the verbiage that was in this murder for hire plot.
Well,
how is that different?
Well, I really didn't see that. I was told all that from the government. So they were just telling me things. They didn't want me to look at anything. So I was just going on what the government told me. And I just had to follow their lead. And that's what I did.
Well, I'd like to speak to that just briefly, is that I read the transcript of supposedly between Force and DPR about the murder for hire. And I can tell you, Ross types like a techie. I hardly ever saw a capital letter when he would write to me, and he was very, you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Well,
R is the letter R, and U.
Abbreviations and kind of, and this was like perfect capitalization, perfect punctuation, and from both Force or whoever and.
Well, I mean, if you're gonna try to kill somebody, you might as well take time for good grammar.
Yeah,
right?
I think so. Yeah, you want to.
Yeah.
So to me, I saw it and I'm like, this is the phoniest thing I've ever seen. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
But anyway.
Yeah, they had me they had me convinced on every type of narrative that you can think of. I'd go 6 months thinking one thing. I'd go 6 months thinking another way. And then I finally came to the conclusion, I'm just going to I don't know. And I'm just going to have to go with my gut feeling. And that's all I can do. Because I can't trust, the government.
You were saying that they kind of didn't trust each other and they worked against each other. Did it seem like they were kind of dragging this out so they could steal as much Bitcoin as possible?
I don't, that's a good point. Carl would always call me and get, what minor should I get? It was nothing about the case. And so it was like, he was getting all the.
So they didn't care about the evidence. They just want to know the best way to make Bitcoin.
Yeah.
And so.
well, that's when
maybe they have a motive for wanting to set this up.
Well, before we didn't have any money and all of a sudden he has all this money. He's to buy these Bitcoin mining machines. And I'm like, oh, I mean, he was talking about getting these big high-end ASICs. I don't know if
this was during a time when you could only buy Bitcoin machines with Bitcoin, right? Or pretty much.
Yeah, you'd have to have Bitcoins. Yeah, pretty. Yeah, this is 2013,
yeah.
So yeah, I don't think you could use a credit card.
So yeah, he wasn't buying them with his government paycheck.
No, yeah. The whole thing, they still, the rumors that I've heard is they still think somebody else is bad. They just haven't. They just don't know who it is yet.
There's a lot of money unaccounted for still. Right?
Silkroad. There was at least, I can't remember what it was.
Not to mention the Mt. Gox claims.
Oh my gosh. that really, I don't know if did you hear that I had a Mt. Gox account.
Yeah.
And Force, he said, "Oh, the government's taking it," but he took it. He there was no court order, and he went and took all my Bitcoin out of, and the court found out about it, and he was being charged, so he's court ordered to pay me back $4,000 in fiat, and I'm like, I'd rather have the Bitcoin back,
right?
Because it was a little bit more valuable now, and so yeah, he stole from me, and from more than one, not only one account. He stole from my Dwala account, and then he stole from my Bitcoin, and then he went and changed all my credentials on Mt. Gox. He went and changed the password. He did everything, so I had no control over it. And so I couldn't make a claim for the Mt. Gox, bankruptcy.
Wow.
So yeah, he really did a number on me. That's for sure. And then he also owes another guy, like some unemployed actor, like $350,000 that he took.
Right. What about the numbers? You and I, last time that you were on, we talked about the statistics, and you said that you had actually sat down and kind of did some numbers on like what was being sold on the Silk Road. How much of the stuff on the Silk Road was really illegal? And how much of that was dangerous drugs?
Well, it was roughly 75% was cannabis. And
Of the whole site?
Of the whole site.
Okay.
And then,
Okay.
roughly 25% was other things. Some of the things were benign chemicals. I'd never
legal
heard of them.
stuff.
They were technically legal on their
Okay.
own. They were technically
I
legal.
thought you had mentioned that the majority of stuff being sold was actually like clothing and
Oh,
apparel
yeah,
and
that
stuff
too.
of the overall. I'm talking of
you-
not of the the stuff that was illegal, but the legal stuff. What portion on the site was actually legal?
I just looked at the one, but I didn't take everything as a whole.
Right.
But there was you could buy clothing, you could buy books, you could buy computers, you could buy. It was basically an eBay, but but what the public is looking at of this whole case, they're focusing on the illicit drugs,
Mhm.
and what people don't realize, that was a minority, not a majority.
Well, that's the media for you, and it's the government. They wouldn't even allow anything but drugs to be mentioned at trial, and the only drugs that were mentioned were dangerous drugs. Marijuana was barely mentioned. I think it was mentioned once in passing, and nothing legal or harmless was mentioned. This was part of the prosecution's narrative that was allowed to prejudice the jury.
Yeah, and that's what I saw. When I read about it, that's what I thought. Well, how come they couldn't let this in? It was really strange. Why were they suppressing this? Why were they holding this back? Why couldn't they? In my opinion, the jury should get the entire picture, not just one-sided picture.
That's how it's supposed to be, Curtis.
I know.
Yeah.
That's why
They should also know that there were corrupt agents all over the site who had the ability to change all kinds of things on the site, and the judge would not let them know about them.
Yeah, and see, and I think what happened was Carl. They knew about Carl Force. They let your attorneys know about Carl Force, but they didn't. But not Bridges.
Right.
And I found out about Bridges way early on, but I was told to not say a darn word.
By whom? The prosecutors?
My attorneys, they were
Oh, your
told,
attorneys.
they were warned. But I think they were warned. They didn't, and I thought, oh my gosh,
The judge didn't even know about him,
I see.
She didn't.
That,
and neither did the defense.
yeah, to this day, I still find I still find out new little things here and there that I didn't know about, and I'm like, oh my gosh, you got to be kidding me. But yeah, during that whole time, I was threatened. Like I say this, in
By
my
the
book.
government, correct?
Oh yes. Oh yeah. And everything that came, that they didn't let me see anything. Everything came from their words.
Mhm.
I was trusting them 100%. Oh, you need to look like beat up. Oh, now we need you dead.
Right.
And they didn't. And I asked them, can I see?
Can
What?
you paint can we just paint a picture of what actually happened? So there was a murder for hire, and murder for hire plot, and they went somewhere and painted you with blood to take pictures.
No, actually, what happened? We were. This is
Fake plot.
Yeah, this is,
Fake
and
blood, of
I
course.
have to keep saying. I'm sorry, I have to keep saying this, but this is in my book. I can legally talk about it in my book, so I'm just regurgitating what's in my book. So that's why I get that. Yeah, and but in my book, what I say is while we were in Salt Lake, they saw all this Bitcoin leave, and they thought that I took it, and then all of a sudden, 4 hours later, they said, we need to make you look like you've been beat up. And I'm like, oh my gosh, what does that mean? And so they took me in a room. They basically waterboarded me. It scared the crap out of me. Dunked me. It's not really waterboarding. They were dunking me. And they took pictures of me being dead, not dead, but just beat up. And they did a good job of it. And then they
So like this is the proof of death
I was only supposed to be beat up at that time.
Okay.
We get home a couple of days later. They called me and say, oh, we need to have you dead now. And so I look at my wife, and my wife goes, oh, I have Campbell's soup. This will be easy. And so I went and laid in the bathroom, and I have a picture of in my book. I have actually the actual picture that was taken, and
which was later used without your permission.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I'm not even going to mention that name because that book.
The other book.
It was used without my permission, and I had Campbell soup's coming out, and then he asked me to scrub all the data. Carl Force did, and I'm like, I don't know how to. I can do it, but I don't know how to. I can figure it out, but I don't want to do it. And so I just sent it to them, and they loved that picture. They were like, "Oh, this is awesome! This is going to be great!" They were all like, "I'm like, why are y'all excited about?" This doesn't make sense. They were too excited, I thought, and then he kept telling me, like, again,
this sounds like some really childish stuff that the government's. These are the people that are protecting you. They're jumping up and down and about to have an orgasm over some Campbell's soup. This is ridiculous.
Oh yeah. The whole thing. When I look back at it, I thought, man, I was played. I was a tool. Well,
you were not there. I'm sure you're not there first. So
no. So the whole thing was ridiculous, and
you were threatened, correct?
Oh, very much so. Like I said in my book, if I didn't cooperate, they were gonna. I had a proffer agreement or whatever it's called, and they said, if we're taking this away, and I was like, why? I'm telling you the truth, and finally,
we don't want the truth. We want you to say this.
And they went through all my bank records, and they did everything they could to try to find any bit of evidence of me stealing those. But they were so positive that I stole them that it was beyond ridiculous. Beyond ridiculous. So,
and meanwhile, the real thieves were sitting right there.
They were right in front of them. They were working
acting
with them.
all innocent. Yeah.
And what was funny, Carl Force would call me on the phone and say, "Oh, I believe you, man. I don't know what these guys' problems are." and then when he was on a phone conversation when there's multiple people on the phone, his tune totally changed. Like, fess up. We know you did it. But when it was only me and him, he was on my side. But when he was all together, he was on their side.
Good cop, badder cop, bad cop,
man.
Badder cop.
Yeah. Within the same person. So we're talking.
Yeah.
Oh my God. So what about like the mainstream narrative? The book that you don't really want to mention. This guy quotes you, and he quotes you in the book, but he's never actually interviewed you.
No.
But now he does say in the beginning of the book that it's from someone from Wired magazine or something like that. Yeah. But still, it's not. It's not directly from you.
And they were a few people were shocked that he didn't call and interview me or just fact check. Mm-hmm. I mean, in that book, there's like 4 chapters on me, and he didn't spend the time 1 minute to call me and say, "Is this true or is that not true?" 4 chapters.
So they got the information from someone from Wired magazine or whatever,
and he embellished
or
on
the government.
Yeah.
Right?
And then I get a phone call from a news reporter in Salt Lake City. He goes, "I just was reading this book," and I'm like, "Oh my heck, this guy lives 30 miles from us." And he called me up and he says, "We need to do an interview with you." And I said, "I can't right now. I'm under obligation. I can't." And I said, "But when my book comes out, then I can, because I got to push my book a little bit. So we're going to do something." And I said, "Take that book with a grain of salt. I've only read my portions of it. I haven't read the whole thing." And because when I read it, I was like, "Oh my gosh."
How do you think that it was twisted from the truth as far as what's in that book and what was actually said between you and the Wired magazine? Or was that distorted in some way?
Well, I think they take it and they add a lot of liberties. So when there's a hole that can't be filled, they just decide, let's fill it with our narrative, so they get a little bit of the truth and then they kind of expand on their version. So,
and I was told by someone who I do trust and believe, first of all, to not be part of that project because it was going to be a total government narrative. Mm-hmm. And then later, the same person told me that he was told by the people who did it that the government provided them with material pre-Ross's trial. So it's a government mouthpiece.
So they shared sensitive information with the media.
I don't even know if that's legal. Probably not. And that they did. And so they set up the whole book.
Yeah, was it Tarbell? Was that one of wasn't it the agents?
Know who. Yeah, I don't know who.
Yeah, I know he's a big part of the book too. I haven't read it, so I know. And so I haven't heard anything.
And yet he wasn't at trial. He was the arresting agent. He wrote the criminal complaint. He claimed he found the server a certain way. All this stuff with Tarbell, and yet absent from trial. The jury didn't even know he existed. Funny about that.
Well, I find that whole thing that's another thing that blows my mind that I can't get into, but how they found all that stuff. So,
Well, experts all over the world said this is gibberish. This is basically a lie.
yeah.
And Robert Graham came out and said it was the NSA. Obviously, this doesn't even make sense what he's saying.
Well, I think the reason why they got the NSA involved is the NSA can't legally spy on their own citizens, right? But since they didn't know who it was, they let's assume he's from England. And so, therefore, the NSA and they can get involved, and so that's how I think they got it. They weaseled their way.
But it's all in secret.
Yeah,
Wow.
but we're all just guessing. Who knows?
Yeah. That's.
Well, we know that they were tracking Bitcoin users a few months before Ross's arrest because that came out in Snowden documents this past March.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Wow.
Yeah. So if you're not using really good, your Bitcoin address is being followed. Probably if you're.
They're supposed to be tracking terrorists, okay?
Yeah.
They're tracking Bitcoin users because I guess they consider them more dangerous than terrorists.
Well, yeah.
So don't you feel safer
It's
now?
a threat to the economy. I guess.
Exactly. Or they're controlling the economy.
Yeah.
And one thing I thought was funny is when this thing's was all said and done, one of the Homeland Security guys said that to me, I'd get out of Bitcoin. It's just no good. I just sell everything you have. Just get out of it. And I'm like,
Did he wanted you to sell it to him, or
no? He just said he was just saying get out of it, and I'm like, no, like what? Why would he say that? That was just kind of weird that he just came out of the blue and said that. But
so back to the murder for hire thing. When they first told you this garbage, did you ever actually believe it, or did you know right off the bat there's something not right here?
Yeah,
or?
I've always thought that. I always thought there was something that wasn't right, And then especially when I found out about, and I always said that something's not right with Forrest. I've always said that. And then my attorneys call me one day and they say, we don't know what's going on yet, but we think there's a bad agent. And I screamed, Force. I knew who it was right when he said it. And then it was kind of funny. Not funny, but ironic. But yeah.
Lyn, how much of this stuff were you guys able to even bring into the trial? How much of
none,
this information you didn't have?
Absolutely none. And this was the defense argued this pre-trial in a sealed off hearing. The media couldn't be there. We couldn't be there. Where our defense attorney argued, this is important to the trial. The jury has a right to know that there were corrupt agents.
Mm-hmm.
Well, actually, at the time, they only knew about one of them that were all over the site. Could change passwords, PIN numbers, keys, could write anything on the site, delete anything, act as all kinds of aliases, including Dread Pirate Roberts. And the jury wasn't allowed to know this. And so the jury had no clue that there was any corruption involved.
Wow.
But
it came out 2 months later after trial.
A lot of the evidence that the defense actually wanted to present was being excluded in order to protect the case against these cops. They're like, okay, you can't. Well, how are you supposed to defend yourself if they're taking your weapon away from you to defend yourself?
Yeah,
exactly. They eviscerated the defense.
Yeah. Well, Draytell tried to get me on the stand, and you know about
that? Forgot that now.
Yeah. My attorney called me up and he says, there are motions flying like crazy in New York right now. And Draytell called my attorney and he said, we're going to get your client. We're trying to get your client to testify because then that would open up the bad agents. Right. And so I was real literally thinking I'm going, and I
wish you had.
And then my attorney said, "No, there's very little. There's motions. He said they're flying back and forth. This is the exact word. They're flying back and forth. Motions are going right now." And at the end of the day, he said, "Yep, the judge kiboshed everything." So because if they would have got me on the stand, the whole thing would have gone poof.
Yeah,
it would have gone a whole different direction.
How in the hell does this go all the way to the Supreme Court? And this is, widely known, and it's not a mistrial.
Well, the Supreme Court doesn't rule on specifics of a trial. They rule on bigger, broader issues. So it went to the appellate court. Yes, it did.
Those weren't the grounds in the appellate court?
The whole murder for hire allegation, even though it was never tried by a jury or anything. And yeah. So
Yeah, those are supposed to be excluded in a motion in limine. And
yeah. I don't understand how that affected it. I don't know how. That has always bugged me. How it affected it didn't affect the outcome of the trial, but it affected the sentencing.
Well, it might have. It prejudiced the jury when the prosecution was
That's
blabbing
true.
away about this man, and it's like, did this. We don't have proof, and we're not charging him, but just take our word, okay? And the judge allowed it. And then in sentencing, she brings it up. And the whole unproven, uncharged allegations. And then in the appellate brief, he's like, yeah, the murder for hire really drove this sentence, and that's okay. Because, he's so dangerous. And we should all be worried about this because we all have a right to a jury trial. It's the Sixth Amendment of the Bill of Rights. And we should be able to face our accusers. We should be able to have a jury of our peers, 12 people, not one judge, deciding it's true. And Ross didn't.
Right. And
it undermines all of our protections.
Yeah. Whatever your view is on it, we should be scared.
Yes.
For whether you think he's 100% guilty or 100% innocent, that's not the issue. The issue is how
it's called
they got
proven
there.
guilty.
Yeah,
proven.
yeah,
The very
exactly.
key word.
Yeah, like the whole backbone of evidence is the fruit of the poisonous tree. If anything, if any part of the evidence is disrupted, if this part is corrupt, then everything that came from that fruit of the poisonous tree is no good.
Exactly.
Well, you can't use it as evidence.
In my case, my attorneys were going to take it away because Carl Force was corrupt, and anything he touched was gone.
Exactly.
But they were warned that if I were to do that, New York was going to step in and charge me because they had other they were not connected to Baltimore. And so I was forced to I was going to take it to trial. But then after I was, my attorney said they could do this. They're going to audit you for the rest of your life. They're going to do this. They're going to do this. They have so much power. And I said, it got me the easiest way out. I'm out.
What kind of threats?
This is the reason 98% of people do plea that are accused. They're threatened, bullied, and frightened by prosecutors and told they're going to lose, told they're going to get a worse sentence. And so they go, okay, even if I'm innocent, I'm just going to plead because I can't. So we've lost trial by jury. We've lost fair trials. This is a pillar of our country and our justice system. And it's being decimated by these prosecutors and some judges.
And especially enacted on against people who can't afford to bond out or can't afford an attorney. They're locked in a cage.
And it's hard to afford an attorney.
So, generally these court cases can drag out for 2 to 3 years in most cases, unless they're trying to grandstand on it. And, in the case of Ross, so they've got you locked in this box, and you'll just agree to whatever. Okay, well,
you're scary, right, Chris?
I can get out on probation. Sure, I did it. I don't care if I did it or not.
When you're looking at 40 to 60 years, you'll say, "Oh, if you plead guilty for this, you're only going to get 2 years." Okay, I'll take the 2 years. I don't want to just say, even though you're not guilty. They're threatening you, and they're going to win. They're the big bullies,
especially the Southern District of New York.
They scared me.
What were some of the most frightening threats that they anchored at you?
I didn't have too much. I just got a few things through my attorneys. I didn't get a whole lot except during the trial.
Wasn't it about time though? You were going to be threatened with sentences.
Well, yeah, that was Baltimore. Okay. Yeah, Baltimore. The Justin Herring.
Oh yeah,
I'd like to get my hands on him.
He's in our railroaded cases.
Yeah.
What was his role?
He was in charge of the Baltimore case. He was the AUSA, put the whole thing together. And then when there was 2 corrupt agents under his wing, they moved him. His punishment he got moved. From what he called me every day and threatened me, and called my attorneys, and it got to the point where my attorneys were saying, "You better be, you're telling me the truth, are you?" I'm like, "Oh my gosh, how many times do I have to repeat myself?
Right?
How many times do I have to say no?"
Prosecutors are now being called kings of the courtroom. They're running our Justice Department, and I've been told by a former prosecutor who's now a criminal defense attorney, he goes, Lyn, they will lie, they will cheat, they will do whatever they have to do to get their notch in the belt and win. And they get promoted for it. They get promoted for corruption and for bullying and all of this, because all you are is their little trophy.
They want that notch in the belt, and they went in their record books and on to the next guy. And because what do they have, a 98 to 99% conviction rate?
Yeah, it's like 1% of people.
I read something.
And that is why there was actually Chicago, New York, and Baltimore all competing to get DPR, get somebody, get a trophy, and beat out the other agencies.
Well, that's why they specifically told me not to talk to anybody else, because they wanted me to all to themselves.
Right.
Well, when you have politicians standing there holding the court documents on television,
Schumer.
You want to talk a little bit about that, Lyn? I mean, how did it? Because so Ross was arrested in San Francisco, and yet they extradited him completely across the country to New York City. Why? Because these. You're talking about these cops who were competing different agencies. They don't want to let go of this big prize. Why would San Francisco turn loose of their big prize to New York?
The Southern District gets what they want. That's what I've been told. If they want it, they get it. They're like a separate kind of system. I've been told that by lawyers. In fact, one criminal defense attorney calls them the second New York mafia. These guys are, they'll go to other countries and grab non-Americans who've never set foot in the United States and drag them back to the United States and put them in prison here. Ross knows several. Yeah. It's like they're like this entity. And so if they want it, and it was run by Preet Bharara at the time. Now he's been fired by Trump. But he was Chuck Schumer's special counsel for years. He's his cohort. And Schumer was behind this. Schumer has always been in bed with the financial interests in New York. He was an influential member of the Senate Finance Committee, the Banking Committee, and he called for the takedown of not only Silkroad but Bitcoin. And then later, after Ross was arrested, he publicly, before trial, said to Eric Holder in an open letter, "Congratulations, you got your man." I'm like, excuse me. Innocent until proven guilty? Oh, I guess we don't need a trial because Chuck Schumer, he's decided. And that's what he did. And he tainted the jury pool because the jury pool was coming from New York. And he already said Ross was guilty before trial.
I'm surprised they didn't do a change of venue. They should have.
Should have. He actually, and this might be an issue we can use. I don't know. But Ross was never offered, and he was supposed to be.
Yeah, let's see, right.
He shouldn't have had to make that change.
And so a little bit about your book, Curtis. What's the name of the book?
Yeah, it's Silkroad Takedown. I thought that was the most appropriate. It had another name to it, but it had the murder thing in there, and I just didn't like that.
Right.
So I felt it was appropriate, and it's on Amazon right now. It doesn't know if it says available. It should say available by. We had to get the pictures put together, the last thing, but yeah, it's called Silkroad Takedown, and it's my story. I don't try to read anybody else's into their story. It's about what I went through and my feelings, the things that happened to me. So if people think that it's going to be this great mystery, like that other books tries to be, it's not.
Do you want a spoiler alert at the end? I love the end.
That
you tell me about.
Lyn and I finished breakfast and we went to a bus.
He carried my suitcase very nicely to the bus in New York City.
That's how it ended.
We met for breakfast. Curtis reached out.
What's wrong with you?
I know.
Her son tried to kill you, and you're carrying her bags.
I know.
He was always so reaching out and saying, "I know it wasn't Ross. I really sympathize with you. I'm on your side." And actually, I had other people say, "You shouldn't talk to him. Don't talk to him." Blah, blah, blah. And finally, I'm like, "I'm going to talk to him." I mean, and he's a very nice guy. I mean, I didn't know what to expect, to be honest. And we had a great talk.
Tatiana, when your muscle.
I had my bodyguard, Tatiana Rose.
Yeah.
And
I wouldn't mess with
she's
her.
Tough. And,
she's from Jersey. Don't want to mess with her.
We had a nice breakfast. And you kind of ran in through your whole story, and I'm like, wow, you've been through the mill too. I mean, it's horrible.
We both. I only went to this point. Lyn is at this point. I mean, it's as far as what she's gone through. She's gone through a
Not
heck
to
of a lot
mention
more.
Ross.
And then Ross is, he's probably off the table over here. But yeah, so I can at least empathize a little bit of what she's going through, because I went through very similar things. So,
is there any small part of you that thinks he was actually responsible?
Man, I have gone back and forth in my mind. Some days, this was a long time ago. Some days I would say, "Oh yes, it has to be." Then other days I would wake up, "No, it couldn't be because of this." And I always I was killing myself trying to figure things out. And I decided, you know what? I'm not going to ever know for sure. We will all never know for sure. So I just decided I'm going to go with my gut.
And that is?
And that is that I don't, whatever your opinion is on of the whole thing, I don't think what happened to Ross is justified. I don't think he deserves the sentence that he got. Whether you think he's guilty or not guilty, 2 lives plus 40 years is beyond comprehensible.
Yeah.
And
you also told me you didn't think it was Ross.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. I for the first year, I was convinced it was Carl Force and those guys. I was convinced.
That's what I think.
And then San Francisco had me convinced the other way around for the longest time. So I just.
Yeah, and just to say, there has never been one eyewitness who can attribute anything of DPR to Ross. Nothing. It's all anonymous chats.
How many other did this ever happen? Were there any other cases of this on the Silk Road ever? I mean, anything even remotely close to it?
Until they got involved.
No, yeah, nothing. Then you have Thomas
That's
Clark.
Why would DPR, if there are many DPRs, then you can't really even say for sure that it was Ross, whether it be one of the other DPRs. And you said there was another DPR that was not exactly a very nice fellow.
Well, there was this other guy.
Really? I don't know about this one.
There was an admin at the he was like one of the very first at the very, very beginning. And then he disappeared. And nothing was ever said. Nothing bad is ever said about him. And I later found out he was arrested and kept under wraps. And so this was like way early on. And so how much information did they give him? I don't know if it was Baltimore, but he was a forum guy. He just disappeared. And I talked to DPR about him. Whatever happened to this guy? Oh, I know, he just kind of fell off the face of the earth. He didn't seem to, he didn't. Oh, I need to go kill him. He just kind of blew it off.
Didn't you say there was a DPR you talked to that was very much anchored in liberty and principles and peace and all of that?
Yes.
And then later.
That's when I wish there was one thing that I could probably say. It was, if I had to say, it was, and it was on my computer that they took. It was a well thought out talk and very intelligent. It was very well written, and I, out of all the communications, that one I could say, you know what, that could I don't know for sure, but that could be Ross. But every other thing, who knows? There's so much disparity, and there was only one time that I thought that could, going back in my head, that maybe that could be him.
So Curtis, if Lyn Ross is free, are you going to be scared?
No, not at all.
Are you going to be worried for your safety?
No. I mean, it's kind of funny. My brother said, "Oh, you should carry a gun."
Because of that?
No, because of all the. I had other threats. I don't know if you knew this. The FBI got involved. Because they thought I stole all this money. Yeah, through Facebook, I was being threatened. My grandchildren were being threatened. They wanted their money back because all the the government agents stole the money.
But would you be worried if Ross got out?
Oh, heavens no.
Or would you be willing to have him over to dinner and hang out? Thank you.
Wait a minute. Would you be worried when forced?
I am worried as hell. I'm counting the days of when they get out. That's when I'm going to seriously think about my safety. Not so much force, but bridges. he scares the bejesus out of me.
Wow.
So I looked at it in the trial. I looked at his eyes, and he just had.
I know I'm jumping all around here, but there's just I've been following this for a long time, and all these things just pop into my head. What about kind of the way that things were being sold on the Silkroad? Now, did things when the cops kind of took control over this? Did the items that were being sold and the way they're being sold change? As far as like, you know, you're not allowed to sell anything that harms people. You weren't supposed to sell guns, nothing stolen. You know, the whole motto of the Silk Road. Did that kind of change when?
Mostly small exchanges of cannabis.
Yeah. I mean, you mean after
the cops took the keys, when the agents had control of the site?
When they took control of the site, I didn't go there. They said, do not go there at all. They don't get tore. And I steered. I didn't even look at the site. I didn't even go to the forums. I steered after that date. I didn't.
And so I've actually
I think that is when the big drug deals start happening.
That's when a lot of the other
the
more nefarious things from what I've been told is once the cops had possession of this, after this actually happened, more nefarious things started hitting the site, and it was
a lot of people posted as anecdotal.
More like Craigslist then.
Yeah, it was anecdotal, but a lot of people were saying, "Wow, DPR, this is not the same guy." I mean, it was all over the site and discussion about it. There's,
Yeah, and then Blake, who knows? He had to be part of it at the beginning. Because he sure took over really quick, didn't he? Blake Benthal.
The man who has disappeared.
Yeah,
he just consequences.
Yeah, he just disappeared. Poof.
Yeah.
The Silkroad 2
number
operator.
2. Yeah, he took over pretty quick, and then all of a sudden, they arrested him and his number 2 guy. He got like 7 or 8 years.
Brian Farrell.
And then
he got 8.
Then just boom, he's gone, working for the government. I do know that.
So
you do know that for a fact?
Yes.
Oh.
How is there? Can you talk about how you know that, or is that something you shouldn't?
I probably shouldn't even go there.
Okay. Awesome. So, what about the most recent admin that was brought back from Europe? I think you'd mentioned that. That kind of what I was hinting at earlier about being
Libertas, Gary Davis.
Yeah, Libertas. Yeah, I had a lot of before. Well, he was on the forums a ton, and I had a lot of interaction with him. And then
he worked for Bitcoin.com.
Yeah,
just recently.
He worked for Bitcoin.com.
Yes.
Yeah.
Another reason not to like Bitcoin Cash. No, I'm kidding. I'm just kidding.
Yeah. So I heard he just struck a deal. So I hope things work out for him.
I hope so too.
I really do. Because I know it sucks to be. He's being charged with exactly what I was doing. And
only there's no one left for him to, they don't need him like they needed you. So
it's really too bad Ireland caved and extradited him.
Yeah.
To the Southern District of New York, of course.
Yeah. I don't know. I hope things work out for him. Really, I really do.
And what about Variety Jones?
That guy's a different story. I don't have too much sympathy for him, to be honest. To me, he was more of a guy pulling the strings.
Mm-hmm. Was he part of the site during the murder for hire plot? Was he operating at that point, or?
Well, he was from the beginning. All I know is the government was after him big time, and he was over in Taiwan or Thailand, yeah. And he, in fact,
he was a DPR, correct?
There was. I would venture to guess that most of the admins, especially him, because he was the one of the main guys. He made all the decisions.
Exactly.
And the other thing is that there was the front end, the back end, and then there was another end where the programmers got in, and I got in there somehow. And I was messing around in there, and I said, I better get the heck out of here. And I saw some user names and things, and it was kind of interesting. So there's a lot more to it than what people realize.
I'm sure. Can you say how it was interesting? Or?
I better not.
Okay. That's fair.
Yeah.
I know. I mean, I don't know how much you could talk about Jones, but I mean, before I think you indicated a little bit that maybe he was a little more aggressive than could be.
Well, yeah,
it would be more likely to actually have been the person.
Yeah,
maybe?
yeah. Well,
If that was, if it even was, if it wasn't the cops.
If it wasn't the cops, it would have been Variety Jones. That's my opinion. So that's why my sympathy for him wanes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I guess he had a background of. He didn't play around, and
no. He was there to, to take me from what San Francisco told me that we had the Carl Force hit, and there was another hit that was led by him, and then I had no clue until they told me.
Then why didn't they charge him with?
He was just extradited, so who knows? He's now so. I don't know much.
I mean,
about
just because they don't have him doesn't mean they wouldn't charge him with it.
I think he's now in custody in New York, Southern District of New York.
So yeah, and one thing he posted. This was well after the Silkroad case, and when they were going after him, and I actually chatted. He didn't know it was me, and I said, so why would you have not me killed? He goes, oh, I didn't do that. The government had to plan it in. And then I asked,
you said the government what
planted the, changed all the text messaging to make it sound like it was him. Because when you read the text message, it was him wanting to kill me. And it was his idea, and it was his, and I said, what? And
the government had total ability to change anything on the site.
Oh yeah.
Well, government meaning the agents, the corrupt agents.
Actually, that's a really good point. You said, actually, when I talked to you before, you said that some of the stuff that you actually wrote was later changed. Like you went back and read some of the stuff that you had actually written on the site, and you went back and looked at it and said, I didn't write that.
Oh yes.
Wow, that's interesting.
In the forums, they posted. I'm like, I was reading it, and I'm like, what? That wasn't me.
That's interesting.
And that really freaked me out. I think I even called my wife and said, like, look at this. Look, it was like screenshots of somebody. And I'm like, this. And then there was one, I go, oh, this was me. I go, this was not me. I was like adamant. I was like, oh my God, it was freaking me out.
I don't know what that does.
So
to
how
the
can
chain
this
of
evidence exactly? How can this evidence not be tainted? How can this evidence that is, obviously tampered with, being presented to a jury and put a man in a cage for the rest of his life?
See, and I can go back to it. That is my whole. Whenever I'm asked this a lot. Well, how can you support Ross? I said, we do not. We don't know what was planted. We don't know. We don't know. And I said, how can you just do that for all nonviolent thing? I don't know. I stopped trying to convince, because I can't. Some people you just can't talk to. Some people I get messaged all the time on Twitter now. I don't say I'm not on it very much, but they would say, how can you? But I'll jump on every once in a while when they say something. I'll say something, and they'll private message me, and I'll set them straight, and they'll say, okay, thanks. But they just need to be.
I see it all the time, especially in regards to the book that shall not be mentioned. Right?
Yeah, that book, man. Some of my buddies bought it, and I go, why did you do that? You just paid him $27 or whatever.
Oh my God. And I know I actually commented on that and called it a bunch of BS, and Tom Arnold replied, the actor, saying that that information was in the front of the book. But it was actually in response to that dude never speaking to you to write the book. And you had said that there were so many sections in the book about you, but he's never even contacted you to speak with you.
They're just taking all the information from other sources, and it's maddening, is what it is, and that's beyond when I did the interview, I said, now you can't put this in a book, because I'm going to write my own book someday. And what did they do? They turned all those notes over to this guy, and
which was the same issue with the picture as well.
Yeah, the picture. Yeah. And the only one thing that I had that, that nobody else could have, they wouldn't, he put on his website, then he hurried and took it down because he knew he was in hot water. But then he called me up and he said, hey, it's already gone to print. We're going to be screwed. And I'm like, well, okay, you got to talk to my wife. She's the one that owned the picture, but he never called, never talked. So
I guess it was worth it, though. If you sue them, they'll just pay.
It's too. If I sue them, it's going to cost me what? Tons of money to sue them, and
exactly.
I might get $1.
Have you signed the petition?
I have. I signed it when it was.
Thank you, Curtis.
No problem. You're welcome.
You want to talk a little bit about the petition?
I would. Yes, we're really working for clemency for Ross, which basically would mean a commutation of this egregious, barbaric, draconian, outrageous, excessive sentence. And this sentence sets a precedent not only, for excessive sentencing in general. There are so many people in the criminal justice system who have gotten ridiculously long sentences. Ross is pretty much the poster boy for that. I mean, to give someone double life plus 40 years for all nonviolent charges, first-time offender, is just really a terrible abuse of government power. But in any case, we have a petition. Please go to freeross.org/petition and help us reach my goal of 500,000 signatures so that I can go to the president and say 500,000 people think the sentence is wrong, and please consider commuting it.
And tweet at Kim Kardashian, because we know that she actually runs the government.
Oh yeah.
If you want real change, ask Kim Kardashian.
Yeah, get her behind it, man.
Anyone who has contacts with Washington, please get in touch with me. I think there's an argument here that's very compelling. This is a terrible sentence and a terrible precedent, and so please help us and spread the word.
And it's pretty obvious that the people with all the power fought and kept control of the narrative just so that they could do what they wanted to do.
That's what they do.
Yeah, it's
having
terrible.
been through this and talked to other people, I learn more and more all the time of the abuses in our criminal justice system, and it's really disturbing. I feel like we're really losing our protections and our rights, and part of it is through the drug war and the mass incarceration.
So check out freeross.org. You can find out all the information there. The petition's there. And do you have a website where someone can get your book?
We do have a website. It's if you just Google Silkroad Takedown book by Curtis Grain, you'll find it. I'll also pin it on my Twitter at I Love Poker. It'll be easy to find.
Awesome. Well, thanks a lot, and I hope we didn't cross any lines, because I know it's kind of delicate with you, but I do want to get as much as possible
this
out
of
this story, so the people that you just go on Twitter and everything all the time, it's a bunch of garbage people regurgitating. Oh, well, why would you defend a murderer?
Yeah, the one thing.
Here's the victim. Ask him.
Well, the one thing
who is alive.
The one thing that I put in my book,
you might be a vampire.
Is that everything I put is the truth as I know it, how it was portrayed to me, and at the beginning. And so it's going to be this huge whodunit at the end. It's not one of but it's interesting. I've been told by the few people that have read it that it's.
It's very interesting to me. I've heard so many different angles of this, and I'm biased. I'm very biased on it, of course. Yeah. But so what? Here's the information. Believe what you want to believe.
Exactly. So and I'm, and I will donate a portion of my book sales.
Awesome.
To help.
Oh, thank you, Curtis. That's great. I really appreciate that.
Yeah.
And I mean, even if you don't, as Curtis said, even if Ross were guilty of everything they said, which I absolutely do not believe, this sentence still is so over the top. So you can just sign the petition because you're against outrageously unjust sentences.
Yeah.
That's what I get. 5 years, 10 years. Okay. He admits he started.
Cool.
It, whatever.
Time served.
Yeah.
Let's go.
Let's go. Be done with it. For this double life thing, that's just, it's unfathomable.
It is.
Right.
For what?
Especially the exact same thing was done immediately afterwards with
Except bigger.
with Silkroad 2, even bigger, and
they let
he's
him
still
off.
walking around.
Yeah. See,
And it should have been worse because, hey, this guy already did it once, and you know that,
exactly
so you
what
know it was wrong, but you
Yeah.
came and did it again.
yeah. So my eyes have been opened for sure. I always thought that the government were the good guys, and granted, a lot of them are.
There are some. The postman. Well, I don't know about that guy either. Never mind. None of them.
But my eyes have been opened. It was a rude awakening.
Yeah, it's hard to go through what Curtis and I have gone through and not have your eyes permanently opened. You see it with your own eyes.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And it is kind of shocking. It's like, wow, this is America now?
Yeah.
And I had no
Lyn,
control.
I know, Lyn, you're very versed in the statistics. Give the prison statistics.
Oh, well.
The America.
Yeah, the American. Well, and I compare it to pre-drug war America. It was 180,000 about inmates in the whole system. It's metastasized 800%. 17,000 people like Ross who are nonviolent have life. The prison population is bigger than 11 states in the United States.
Wow.
Life sentences have quintupled since the drug war. It's becoming this horrible monster of mass incarceration that has made the United States the biggest incarcerator on the planet. And there's a lot of money being made.
Money making.
And there's very much money maker and power grabbing and shredding our constitutional protections. So it's really serious. You don't have to have someone in prison or be in prison to be concerned about the situation. And it's so wrong. It didn't used to be like this. America hasn't always been like this. And we need to at least go back to pre-drug war America in terms of how we handle mass, well, it wouldn't be mass then, but the prison system.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
man, I think we covered quite a bit there.
Yeah.
So if you guys have any final thoughts, we'll
no,
go ahead.
I just think that people need to get out there and see what their congressmen and senators and they have the power to change who's in office and try to make. I mean, we're not going to change the world, but
Vote harder.
Yeah.
Vote harder.
Yeah.
Wait.
Sign the petition.
Yeah,
Yes.
sign that.
That's how you vote.
Sign the petition. Yeah, that's a good one. I wish I could sign it twice.
Yeah, me too.
Okay. All right. Thanks, guys, for watching, and
Thanks,
we'll
Danny.
see you later.
Thanks.
Thanks, Curtis.
Thank you.